Welcome back, everybody, to the Brew with Matt and Mike. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We have a nice little show for us today. We're going to break down the UCLA game. Go Badges! Go Badges! And then
Sir.
talk a little bit about maybe some favorite memories of going to the Kohl Center as a fan, as well as what we see from this team after the team's bounce back after what was a little bit of a rougher start to the week on Saturday. Them coming back and getting a nice win in UCLA. So, Matt, what did you see from the game today? How are you feeling about our squad? We were a little bit perplexed, to say the least, the last time we spoke, but they came back, did well today. What did you see today that you liked?
Well, I liked the intensity to start. They were not feeling sorry for themselves after getting beat up by Purdue, which I liked, and the shots were falling. I mean, that's the biggest thing. They were hitting shots, especially in that first half, going 8 of 16 from 3 in the first half. To UCLA, went 0 of 10 from 3 in the first half, and UCLA finished 1 of 17 from 3. And Wisconsin ultimately finished 10 of 30 from 3. But yeah, overall, I like the energy from the team. And I also John Blackwell finished 1 of 9 from 3, but I liked in the second half where he was getting downhill and spraying the ball out to shooters. I like seeing that from John Blackwell. He played a little bit more point guard in the second half, which I found interesting, and he was able to get by his guy or just get a split step where he was able to draw a little help and then dish it out, and that was a big play. I believe Janicki made a 3 to make it 63 to 53 off of a John Blackwell drive and dish, right when UCLA was trying to get a little bit closer. And then also another thing that stood out to me was Rohde in the second half. I thought he had a really good first 5 minutes of that half where UCLA came out with a different energy and intensity. They wanted to, make their run and throw a haymaker punch, and they did, but Rohde made some key plays and some savvy plays and stayed under control to kind of stave them off. So, yeah, that stood out to me. I mean, statistically, Boyd had a really nice game going 20 points, 8 boards, 5 assists, only 2 turnovers and a steal. Like we were talking off camera, he goes really, really hard. And I was pretty hard on him in the last episode, but I do appreciate his effort. And finishing with 5 assists, I like that. I like to see 5 assists. You can't deny that. And then Nolan Winter, he's starting to hit threes now. He went 2 of 5 from 3, and that's an absolute game changer for Wisconsin. 8 of 9 from the free throw line. If Winter can continue to shoot well, that will be huge. I said Wisconsin finished 10 of 30 from 3. Blackwell was 1 of 9 from 3, and I feel like that's a little bit deceiving because a lot of those were really close. I know close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, right? But Blackwell had a lot of in and outs that, 2 or 3 more of those fall, and then the team percentage looks pretty good. So overall, hey, that was a good win against a good team. Even though Sky Clark was out for UCLA, that was a quality performance from Wisconsin.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Kind of piggybacking on what you said. Boyd's played hard. Even the last couple of games, we've seen him and we've been maybe a little bit more of wanting him to do some certain stuff of how we would want him to play, but at least he shows up. He's engaged. He wants to get the crowd involved, and defensively he showed up today, which was great. He got himself going and was a big piece on the glass. 8 rebounds for him. That's a really good stat for him. I think if he can get above 5 rebounds, that kind of shows where he is engaged, both defensively, especially defensively, and then trying to get out and push. It was interesting. They didn't have Rapp tonight, so they really went with more of a 6-man rotation with Janicki getting most of those minutes. I thought he had a great game. Janicki was, yeah, and it, for him. It's one of those things where he doesn't need to be an offensive engine, right? We want him to be a little bit more offensively inclined, but the way he gets himself going is being in transition, being a pest defensively, getting on the offensive glass, finding those 50-50 balls where he has to come up with them. And when he does that, he adds a nice element to this team. That's kind of one thing that, we wanted their two guys, Blackwell and Boyd, to do that stuff, but they got a lot of other responsibilities. So when Jack comes into the game, he needs to really focus on how he can bring energy without being aggressive, but not necessarily shooting the ball. And then, yeah, go ahead. What you got?
Well, yeah, I also want to say we discussed this a little bit in the Wisconsin-Purdue game, but the ball just wasn't zipping around. And in the first half, you had 10 assists on 15 made field goals in the first half. The ball was moving really, really well in that first half. And one thing I will say that I didn't love, I mean, it worked, so I can't knock it too much. But in the second half, it felt like Wisconsin early was trying to kind of drain that clock out, and they would just have Blackwell slowly bring the ball up the court. The ball wouldn't get within the 3 point line, and then Blackwell, and it worked because they hit some big shots, but just having Blackwell kind of stand there and not run any offense. So there was a lot of times that I saw from Wisconsin where they didn't get the ball within the 3 point line until like 13 seconds left in the shot clock, 14 or 12. Like I like to see them get into their sets a little bit earlier, but it worked because Janicki hit a contested three. He's shooting 20% from three, 25. He hit a contested three in a big moment, and Winter hit a three right after that off of a Blackwell assist. So I liked what I saw from Blackwell being able to spray the ball around, but I didn't love the idea of just kind of holding the ball and then getting into the set late. And then it worked. It worked, but I don't love that philosophy moving forward. I thought they should have kept running a little bit more offense. And an idea that I have moving forward for Blackwell is he is magical from the mid range, and I'm a
Gotta go
boomer in
find it.
this. Yeah, I'm a boomer in this respect. Like, I love the mid range Jay. Like, I love Michael Jordan highlights. I love watching Kevin Garnett highlights where he's 1 foot in front of the 3 point line. Or you go to an '80s game, everyone's just camped out, spotting up,
Mhm.
waiting for the ball 22 feet away from the hoop instead of like 24 where they could shoot a three. But I'm not saying they should do that, but I like the mid range game. And I think Blackwell, he's physically pretty solid, especially in the offensive end, I'll say, where maybe feeding him to the post a little bit more if he needs to get rolling and just have him kind of hunting that mid range J. I do like UCLA shot a lot of mid range J's, and
You're a
they made a
fan.
decent amount, some really tough ones. But yeah, that's some observations I have and a suggestion I have moving forward is, hey, if Blackwell, if the three's not falling, go get to that mid range, go get him in the post, and then maybe he shoots a three after that.
Yeah, and he definitely looked like the most comfortable he has since he had his injury, right? And from what I think it was or what I heard, I think it was a groin injury, if I was not
That makes
mistaken. Is that
sense.
what they talked about it? So groin injuries are goofy. It's an area that you got to push off from. You got to defensive slide from. It's a very important area. Adductor injuries can really kind of derail you because if you feel a little bit of a pinch on the inside of your leg, you may or may not want to overextend. And so I thought he was moving probably the best he's moved over the last, since he's had that injury. And yeah, for him, he has that ability to get to the mid range. He does, and I think there can be ways to manufacture that. We'll see what they can come up with. I would actually love to see a much deeper, like kind of a post up ball screen. I've seen some European teams that have run this, and I've had some actions where I've played with guys who are very lethal in the mid range and kind of set him up on the post, and then basically you would Nolan Winter comes and sets an extremely deep ball screen on him, maybe at 18 feet, and getting him into finding a little bit of space or having your best roller run to the rim. So hopefully the staff could find ways to help him manufacture more stuff than just out of our normal offenses and find some more isolation sets for him to be successful in that mid range because he is lethal with that. Even though he hasn't shot great, his percentages dipped from last year. When it's cooking, he's cooking.
Yeah, and one thing just to build off that a little bit is, and this is going to be quite the throwback, and if anyone remembers this name, I'll be super impressed. But I feel like sometimes when you have an injury that's not over the top and it slows you down a little bit, the game can slow down in a positive way. I know that sounds a little bit bizarre, and obviously you don't want to be playing hurt, but sometimes it can slow down just a little bit for you where you can see things a little bit more and you're not going 110 miles per hour every single play. I remember a game between Arizona and Arizona State in 2014, and Jermaine Marshall, who unfortunately passed away, God rest his soul. I really enjoyed watching him play, but I remember he was a little injured, if I remember correctly, and he had an unbelievable game. He had like 30 points against Arizona when Arizona was a top 5, top 10 team. And he wasn't playing super fast, but things were just flowing for him and they pulled off a huge upset. And yeah, so that's something that I would say for Blackwell. Like, perhaps that would be a silver lining right now. You might not be able to move as fast as you want to, perhaps, but perhaps the game can slow down just a little bit for you and you can see things a little bit better on the floor. And he, like I said, he was really able to dish the ball out to his teammates quite well, and he was getting to the hoop a little bit, but still, to me, he does look a step slow. Why do you think that Wisconsin doesn't just say, "Hey, Blackwell's injured"? I feel like they kind of keep it on the down low.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you don't necessarily always, reveal your scouting report or your injury report until you're absolutely required to. In the case of John Blackwell, I think it's depending on what it is, the type of injury. It's always, there's a difference between playing hurt and playing injured. And the biggest difference is if I play injured and I continue to play, will I get worse? Will my condition worsen? And that's a big thing for injuries is, and being like, oh, I'm just hurt. That's part of being an athlete. Like and that's something that comes with some mental toughness. Some guys have higher pain tolerances than others.
Yeah, you had a high
Um,
one, or
Still have
have
a
a
high
high one,
one.
I should
I
say.
still
Yeah,
have
I
a high one.
corrected
I'm still,
myself.
hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But yeah, and then there's just some guys who, like they can play through it, and you got to, and that's just part of the game that you have. So, uh, for me, it's looking at, I think John understands too. Like they, as much as we need him to play better, he's the guy. Like it's him and Boyd, it's their team, and he knows like he has an opportunity, and if he can play through this, and he's not going to, worse get worse with playing, you got to play. It's just it is what it is. He's now making money as a player, but also I think he has that in his DNA of man. He just wants to hoop. I think he loves to play, and that's the other thing. That's where for me I kind of look at it as guys is when you're not feeling great, when you're a little bit dinged up, when you know you're kind of in this middle part of the season, because this is when you really start to get dinged up now. This, you've had multiple days of physical tough games, practices, and I know that especially in college, practices are real in college. Like they're real at the professional level, especially if you go over to Europe and you got to do stuff. But in college, it's real. They're going full speed. Guys are playing hard, so you'll get some bumps and bruises there, and you can really see the guys' toughness and their some of their love for the game, right? Of I'm willing to put myself through this pain and through this uncomfortableness to play. So that's why, and it's also an advantage for teams. Disadvantage for teams. Hey, we know he's dinged up. Okay, let's attack him defensively. Oh, hey, we know he might not be here. This is going to change the game. I think they didn't tell. They didn't know if Rapp was going to play or not. And you know, Rapp hasn't shot the ball extremely great, but he's their stretch big right now. He's their
Mhm.
best shooting big man, and even though he hasn't knocked it down as high a clip as he would like, he still creates some gravity. He still allows some spacing. So, and Mick Cronin over there at UCLA is a great coach, and all of a sudden he knows he's not playing. He can change his game plan a little bit. He can load up sides to those two guards and make sure hey they don't see as much space. So there's definitely an advantage of that. That's the biggest things is why teams are not always so forthright on, hey, this is who's playing tonight. This is who isn't.
What I also find interesting, I wonder if this is just a part of the strategy because Blackwell's banged up a little bit, but they had him guarding Bilodeau quite a bit, the power forward for UCLA, and they would switch on him. Little guys, Nick Boyd would be guarding Bilodeau. They had no problem throwing whoever on him, which showed a little bit of just disrespect. Where they're saying, "Hey, go and beat us. You got a little guy on us, make us pay," because he's more of a finesse, skilled big guy. But I found that really interesting that they had no problem throwing little guys on Bilodeau. And another point I want to throw out: 10 turnovers to 8 in this game.
Yep.
Wisconsin had the 8, so they won the turnover battle there to UCLA's 10. And I was telling you off camera that I've been getting more angry at this team than I have historically at Badger teams. And usually I am very glass half full, but I've been getting quite upset. I think just a little bit of the selfishness has been bothering me. But I can't really knock 8 assists or 8 turnovers and all the assists. That was what we wanted to see from the team. Mike, Nolan Winter starting to shoot the ball really, really well. Can you talk
Yes.
about what you've seen in his form? Because Mike can get quite granular and kind of talked about what he saw, what was going wrong with Nolan Winter earlier in the year. But he's starting to hit threes, went 2 of 5 last night. What are you starting to see from Nolan Winter shooting wise?
Well, we kind of talked about it early when he was going through his shooting struggles. Was he had a very flat shot. He was shooting laser beams. The hoops at 10 feet, and he's shooting 10-1, 10-2.
Yeah,
And he was a little
Chandler
bit more.
Parsons.
Yeah, exactly. But Chandler Parsons had I don't know how it went in. It's kind of that Kawhi Leonard thing too. I don't know how it goes in. For me as a guy who shoots the ball and who has taught shooting and learned shooting, I don't know how it goes in, but good for them. They got giant
It
hands, and
went it went in until he signed a massive contract for the Mavericks.
this is also very true. He got paid off of that. So, but the biggest thing for Nolan Winter right now is he's getting the ball up. If the ball goes above the white square for arc for him, he doesn't have a overly arc shot, but it's got to get above the white square for him. It looks really good. In terms of his body positioning, he's more vertical right now. We were talking off camera. He gets in that Goldilocks spot. He's not too far forward. He's not leaning back. He's got a good solid base. So it looks really, really great. The fluidity, his shot timing has returned to what it was last year. If you looked at some clips early, his shot timing was just a little bit different. And that's a very important thing for him, especially as more of a rhythm shooter. And then, his arm angle of his finishing is slightly higher, which is, coming back to him getting a little bit more arc. So some very minute, small changes, but all of a sudden, shooting is that way. You make a couple of small changes, the trajectory of the ball comes out a little bit differently, and then the percentages go back up. So it's great to see him do that. And then he's shooting shots. Like, this is the other thing. He's starting to learn where he's going to get his shots, and he's taking them, right? Like, that has something to do with his shot timing. He had a couple, the one he hit from the top of the key in the second half. Oh, he was ready for it. He had his feet set. He was ready, and it was an inside-out pass, right? With the best threes are always coming from inside out. So Blackwell did a great job attacking from the left wing, getting in the paint 2 feet, boom, boom, sprayed it out to him right at the top of the key because he does shoot the ball really well from the top of the key. That is by far his best trail position.
Yeah.
He sometimes gets stuff a little bit off, but right on top of the key, right in the middle of the floor, for me, one of the easiest shots to shoot. You get your good sight lines as well as a big. That's where you spend a lot of time. So it's great to see him get that back and find that confidence because that's the other thing. Yeah, he had some form stuff and some physical stuff was going, but then it was just mental, right? It was mentally getting shot prepared, mentally knowing, hey, I'm going to take this shot and I'm going to knock it down. One thing my dad always tells me, he's one of the only person who's seen me shoot more than myself. And he always tells me, he's like, when I shoot the ball well, he tells me, he's like, man, you were telling the ball to go in the hoop. You weren't asking it. You weren't like, oh, maybe this will go in. And those shots that he knocked down and even the shots he took, he was like, no, you're going in the basket. And you could see that kind of mental fortitude within his head when he's shooting. So it's great to see him find that confidence. It's great to see him find the kind of that little monster that says, no, I'm a bad dude and I'm going to knock this down.
That's super well said. I don't think you could have said that any better because when you were talking, I was thinking the exact same thing. Nolan Winter was just super ready to shoot the ball. And
Yeah.
he shot it with confidence and flow and rhythm. His hands were ready to catch the ball, and he was ready to get that shot up. There was no indecisiveness, which I really like to see from Nolan Winter. And yeah, the fact that he is starting to play at a much higher level, just hitting shots, changes everything
Yeah.
for Wisconsin. Where perhaps I can become more bullish again. I'm not going to get bullish yet. I'm going to wait a little bit longer, but I was quite bullish to start the year, and I stayed bullish for a while, and now I'm a bit more bear. But we shall see. Things can change. Things can change.
Here's the
And
deal, Matt. I'm letting you know. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm back on the train. Count me in. I know they got some
I'm not there yet.
inconsistencies. You know what? I need to see some more, obviously. But this is the type of win. They figured it out. We'll see what they look like against Michigan. Hopefully, they can put it together and be more consistent. Right? This is one of those things you build on, though. So,
Yeah, they need to be road dogs. They need to get. I
road
mean, at
dogs.
Michigan will be tough, but at Minnesota, it's always tough at the barn.
It
Hopefully, they can
is.
take Rutgers at home at Penn State. Hopefully, they can get that. You know what? They do have a schedule where perhaps they can build a little bit of confidence.
They needed it.
Hopefully, they can get one of two in these next two games, the Michigan or Minnesota, but then stack up some home W's and beat Penn State on the road. That could change things for them for sure. But yeah, if they could be competitive with Michigan, I'd be very happy. I hate Michigan because they are just loaded with transfers. I hate that a top five team is just the whole team is transfers. I don't even know how you root for that. I don't even know how you're like proud of that. Like, cool. You brought in all these guys like $5 million from all over the country. There's no Michigan pride in that team. So I really don't like Michigan. I hope to see them fail. So hopefully Wisconsin can do that because there is some continuity on Wisconsin, right? Like
There's
there's a
some.
little bit. So for me as a fan, it is easy. I can still root for Wisconsin a little bit, and see some Wisconsin kids, some Midwest kids, some
Yeah.
continuity. And then last thing I'll say is Carrington, limited minutes once again. Hit a three or two, but I hear or he hit 1 3, one of two from three. But I will say I noticed that Greg Gard is much harder on Carrington than he is all the other guys. Part of it is Carrington's a senior; he's a 1 year guy. Kinziger, for example, you got to keep him happy. He'll be there hopefully until he's a senior. And other guys, you want him to stick around and not go portaling. But I do notice that he is really hard on Carrington. Carrington makes a mistake, and Gard is stomping around in a way that's much different than just about every other player on the roster.
I mean, that's an expectation thing. Like, and as a player, I can see it from both sides because I've been watching and I've liked some things that Carrington does, and then especially he brings some tenacity at times. He's an older guy, so you can kind of rely on some of his experience. But then it's a little bit odd because defensively, he'll just kind of do some stuff that a guy of his age and his ability should do. And that might be one of the biggest things and pet peeves of high level coaches is like, and especially, coaches that have a confidence in you to do things right. And the ultimate sign of respect as a player is a coach that cares about you because they think they can get more out of you. And I think right now is Coach Gard is frustrated because he knows what Carrington's capable of, and he's just not doing it. We expected him to be more of a wing defender, to be able to spell Rohde and be able to come in and be a high level tough guy and defensively be engaged and locked in. And that's one of the things that he's really struggling with right now. He's got a senior who's been around, who's been in college basketball for a long time, and all of a sudden he'll just make some mistakes that you're like, oh my God, you can't do that. You've been around. You're not a young guy. This isn't a new experience for you. You know what this takes. You've seen what it takes to try and win at this level. Like the things that you have to do consistently, and you're not doing it. And so that's why I think Gard is upset with him. And it's good for me. I look at it like this: he's hard on him, but he hasn't given up on him yet. If he just sits him at the bench and he just kind of starts to expect those mistakes from him, and Gard is no longer passionate about it, that's when you start to get in trouble as a guy. Then you start to go, oh man, he doesn't like me anymore. It's over. It's dead. Like, all right, my time is going to be limited. So, because I've had it both ways. I've had it where a coach stayed with me and I was able to show stuff, and then I've also had it where a guy, just kind of stops talking to me. And all right, cool. I kind of knew my job was over at that point.
Yeah. Definitely want it to be the former. That's a really, really good insight right there. And is there anything else you want to talk about the game, or do you want to go into our last segment here?
Oh, no, we're good on the game. I think we did a great job breaking it down. I'm excited. I get to ask the question today. So knowing hold on one second. Hold on, give me 1 second.
All right.
Hey, nuevo año. Lo siento, yo tengo un podcast ahora, so necesito like 5 minutos más, pero no hay importancia. Okay. Estoy haciendo una cosa, ¿está bien? Yeah. Okay. Let me check with you. Okay, sorry. Come right back in. All right, so really excited about this next segment. I get to ask the question today. Matt does such a great job of hosting and making sure we get some of my insights. Now I'm really excited to ask him because I've actually only got to experience it, I think, 1 or 2 other times in my life. What is your favorite thing about going into the Kohl Center? For me, I remember I had to do it as a recruit, and I only did that twice. But you've been a fan at multiple games. What's your favorite thing about going to the Kohl Center, as well as what's one of your favorite Kohl Center memories or games that you'll probably tell your kids about at a bedtime story about?
I would say my favorite thing about the Kohl Center is I like the architecture. I like the design. I like the colors. To me, it's very aesthetically pleasing once you get inside the curtain and you see all the red seats. The court looks nice. I think it's a very aesthetically pleasing environment. And yeah, that's probably my favorite thing about the Kohl Center itself. Like, talking about the building is I like the colors, but I don't love the way it was designed, and I don't love how they grandfathered in kind of an older generation where the crowd is a little bit too tame for my liking, a little bit too old. But I would say my favorite memory at the Kohl Center would probably be the Michigan game for sure. I'll say the Michigan game your senior year where you hit Brust for that half court shot. Yeah, that was a fun game. Stormed the court as a little 14-year-old and it was just a lot of fun. Experienced that with my friends. Super grateful I got to go to that game. But yeah, my favorite part about the Kohl Center, I would say in general, is the rare moment. It's pretty rare now. It used to happen a lot more where the crowd would be pretty jazzed up and the crowd would be really good. The last time I remember it being kind of raucous was Purdue, Wisconsin in 2022 for the Big
Okay.
Ten championship game
Yeah.
where Chucky hit that backboard shot. That was a wild crowd. That was as good as the crowd as you'll get. But a lot of times for even relatively big games, the crowd is pretty tame. But I like once in a blue moon when it kind of reaches where there's such an exciting game and the crowd is really good and they're standing. When the fans are actually standing, they don't stand a
Yeah.
lot at the Kohl Center. So I would say that's my favorite part about going to the Kohl Center. And my favorite memory is definitely that Michigan game.
Yeah, it was a fun time. That was the only other time the arena was louder that I can remember was when we played Michigan, when we played Ohio State my sophomore year. That was the only time I can remember a stadium being louder than when we played Michigan that game. So definitely very fun that we have the same. We've had a shared memory even before we knew each other.
Yeah, and actually, I was at the Ohio State game. I was at that one too. That one was up there. And then I've been to like the 3 best games in like the last 15 years, which I'm very lucky. I went to that Ohio State game, that Michigan game, and then I would say the Purdue game. That Purdue game a few years ago was unbelievable.
A crazy game. I remember watching that live. Actually, I was like, "Oh, he hit it! Oh no!"
Yeah,
Absolutely
that was
crazy.
fun. Johnny
Nice.
Davis versus Jaden Ivey. Great matchup. But yeah, so I think that will do it for today's episode. Mike, thank you once again for coming back on the Brew. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back again soon. So hit that subscribe button and see you later.